This will be part 2 of my late spring update tour. If you missed part 1, I'll place a link at the end of this video. I'll pick up where I left off in part 1 with this group of trees here. And this is my coconut cream mango, which was planted here a little over 3 years ago. And I've never got any fruit off of this one. It's flowered in previous years, but I've never had a fruit set off of it. It's already at the end of its flowering cycle. I'm not sure if I'm going to get any fruit off of it. This other one over here is my Glen mango. I've never had any fruit set off of this one either, but it looks like these here may have set. Hopefully at least one of these will reach full maturity so I can sample the fruit, see what it tastes like. I also have another mango here. This is a Kerry mango, and this is the only one that I've actually had a fruit set off of. The tree was much taller when it set fruit, but it was still way too young, and I shouldn't have allowed it to set any fruit. I should have just concentrated on allowing it to grow, and as a result it almost died, and I wound up having to cut it all the way down to what you see now, and it's starting to push out new growth, but it's struggling. I'm thinking I may just go ahead and replace it with a more mature Kerry mango. And here's my Gyro Fuyu persimmon, which is also starting to set some fruit. This one was planted a little over 3 years ago, and this is its second fruit set. Initially I had planted 3 persimmon trees here. I had 2 other varieties, coffee cake and chocolate persimmon, but they didn't survive this past winter and they wound up dying. So I already purchased another Fuyu persimmon that I'll be planting here next season. The Fuyu seems to do better in my area, so I'm going to stick with the Fuyu. As you can see here, it has quite a bit of fruit that's already set, so it should be another good harvest. The other 2 varieties that I had, the coffee cake and the chocolate, also set fruit, but they just don't do well in my climate. This tree here, last season right here is where I had the branch that wound up breaking off because it had a lot of fruit that had set, and I neglected to stake it up, and it wound up snapping the branch. But I still managed to get a pretty good harvest off of it. And this is my ice cream bean tree. This one here puts on quite a bit of growth. It's very aggressive, and I had to heavily prune this one just a few months ago because it was shading out this whole area. But as you can see, it's already put on quite a bit of growth. I was worried that I may have cut it back too much, but it's put on quite a bit of growth and it's doing really well. I put this one in the ground a little over 3 years ago, and last year was the first time that it ever produced any fruit. It was a really small harvest, so hopefully now with all this new growth it'll put on a bigger crop. And this next one here is my Pitomba, which was planted in the ground a little over 3 years ago. I've had fruit set on this one before, but the last bloom, the tree was heavily infested with black sooty mold, and I wound up losing the entire harvest. I tried spraying neem oil, and that didn't take care of the problem. The only thing that seemed to work was spraying it with soap and water, and then letting it set for a little bit, and then coming back and washing it off with a high pressure hose, and that took care of most of it. It still has a little bit on there, but it's doing much better, and it's starting to push out some new flower buds. So hopefully I'll be able to get it to set some fruit this season. And here are my apricot trees. This one here is a Blenheim, a Royal Blenheim, and it's put on a pretty good amount of fruit. It's a bit hard to see, but it's got quite a bit of fruit scattered throughout all the branches here. This one and I have three. I have a Apium, a cotton candy Apium, this Blenheim apricot, and a Katy apricot. The Apium and the Blenheim are the only ones that have produced fruit. And I'll show you the Apium in a little bit. It's also put on quite a bit of growth. Here, you can see all three of them. I'm gonna have to come through and prune these down as soon as I harvest the fruit off of them. They put on way too much height. I'd like to keep them a little bit smaller than what you see. This one here on the far right is the Katy, which hasn't produced anything. The Apium, on the other hand, has put on quite a bit. It's got more fruit on it than the Blenheim does. But between both of those two, the Blenheim and the Apium, it should be a good harvest, more than what I got last season. These have been in the ground for about 3.5 years. They put on quite a bit of growth, and it's hard to tell where one tree begins and one ends. But the Katy, for some reason, doesn't seem to do well. This fruit you see here is off the Apium. The Katy does not have a single fruit that has set the whole time that it's been planted there. And this other one over here is the Blenheim. And it's a bit hard to see because the fruit's still green, but there's quite a bit of fruit that also set on the Blenheim. Here's a little bit more fruit on there as well. As soon as I harvest the fruit off of these, I'm gonna have to cut these back. Right here in this section here, they should be cut all the way so you could see all the way through, but the trees have put on so much size, they're growing into the trees that are right next to it. So I'm gonna have to cut this one down for size and shape as soon as I harvest all the fruit off of it. And over here in this other section are my peach trees. This 4-on-1 peach tree has put on quite a bit of fruit. I've already harvested quite a bit and given a lot of it away. We've eaten quite a few of them. Even froze some for smoothies and jarred a few of them as well. And as you can see, it still has quite a bit of fruit on there. This other one here in the back is a Santa Barbara peach tree. This one doesn't ripen any fruit till after the 4-on-1 has been completely harvested, so it still has a ways to go before I can start picking those. As soon as I harvest all the fruit off this 4-on-1, I will be pruning this one down quite a bit. It's put on quite a bit of growth, and I really need to bring the size down. This one here in the middle is my Spice Z Nectar Plum. Last season I heavily pruned this one, which is why it's as small as it is. It's just barely starting to put on growth, but it did manage to set a little bit of fruit on there. As soon as I'm able to prune the apricot trees and the peach trees, that'll give this one quite a bit more room, and hopefully it'll put on a little bit more growth. And behind this Spice Z Nectar Plum, I have 2 nectarines that are in the back, a Saze King and a Snow Queen nectarine. Here's a better view of them. This one here is the Saze King nectarine. Produces a rather flat fruit, and I've had previous harvests off of this one, but I lose a lot of the fruit due to the fact that they split on the bottom. And as soon as they split, they start getting infested with insects, and usually the fruit usually spoils. So I don't get to keep very many of them. It's very good tasting fruit, but they're prone to splitting, which makes them difficult to grow. And this other one here is my Snow Queen nectarine. The growth habit on this one is not as aggressive as the Saze King. I'll have to prune the Saze King in order to give the Snow Queen a chance to put on a little bit more growth. And here's a better view of the other peach tree growing next to the 4-on-1 peach tree. This is the Santa Barbara peach that I was talking about, which doesn't set its fruit till well after the 4-on-1 has set its fruit. And this tree here that you see was a Babcock white peach tree that died this last winter. It didn't survive the cold temps, and I wound up losing this tree. And here in this 15-gallon grow bag, I have another 4-on-1 peach tree, which also produced a pretty good harvest this season. And right in here in this area, I have right in that area there, I have 2 pink Barbie guavas growing. They're a bit hard to see because the apricot is blocking the view. But they're doing well, and they're putting on quite a bit of growth. No fruit on them yet, but they always do well, so I should get a good harvest off them. This one here is my Eureka lemon tree. It lost quite a bit of leaves during the winter months, but as you can see here, it's starting to put on some new growth. So it's bouncing back pretty well. This tree, as well as just about all the other citrus trees that I'm about to show you, were planted about 3.5 years ago, like this Caracara orange tree that almost died on me as well. This one got hit pretty hard during the winter months, but it's also starting to put on some new growth. And this next one here is my Moro blood orange. This one did really well during winter and handled the cold well, but for some reason I've never been able to get a this one to set any fruit. It hasn't even flowered, so I'm not sure what's going on with this one. And next to it I have my Satsuma mandarin. Another one that got hit really hard during the winter months. This tree was already struggling going into the winter months. A couple of seasons ago, the tree was much bigger then, and I harvested a huge crop off of the tree. It was probably close to 100 mandarins. And right about that time, I transplanted the tree. First off, I shouldn't have allowed that many mandarins to set, because although it was bigger than what you see here, it's still a fairly small tree. And then I went and transplanted it, so it was already weak from the heavy harvest, and transplanting it went into transplant shock, and I wound up almost losing it, and I had to cut it down quite a bit. But as you can see, it's starting to bounce back, so hopefully it'll do well. And over here, these two are my grapefruit trees. That's an Oro Blanco on the left and a Rio Red grapefruit that's here on the right. And they also got hit pretty hard during the winter months, and they're slowly starting to come back, putting on new growth. The Rio Red is recovering a little bit faster, but hopefully they'll both do well. And right here, these are my ice cream banana plants. I'm hoping that at least one of these will produce a banana rack this season. I had 3 other plants that have already produced bananas in previous seasons, and I already cut them down. This variety takes about 2 years in order to be mature enough to set some bananas, so they're right about that time now, so hopefully I'll get some bananas this season. This is my Hawaiian white guava. Last season it produced its first set of fruit, but the fruit didn't develop well. It was small and didn't have good flavor, so hopefully this season it'll do better. And this is my Meyer lemon tree. This is another one that handled the winter cool months really well. And as you can see, it's put on quite a bit of growth and it's looking pretty healthy. I've gotten good harvests off of this one in the past, so I'm sure it'll do well this season. And this is my dwarf Rio Red grapefruit that did not do well during the winter months. It lost a lot of its leaves, but as you can see here, it's starting to push out a really good amount of new growth, so this one should recover nicely. And here's my Dorset golden apple tree that is doing really well. This one fruits about twice a year, and this season the apples appear to be a little bit bigger than what they were the previous seasons. They're still not quite as big as what you find at the store, but they are a good size and they have excellent flavor. And in my area here in zone 10A, it doesn't seem to lose its leaves. Here you can see that it's pretty good, fairly good sized fruit. But for some reason it won't lose all its leaves and it doesn't go dormant. When I wind up spraying it, I have to wind up defoliating it, and it's the only way I can get it to drop all its leaves so I can spray it. But it'll keep its leaves year round if I let it. And here are my pear trees, which were planted here a little over 3 years ago, and neither one of these has done well since then. That's a pineapple pear tree on the left and a hood pear on the right. I bought these from an online nursery, and they just were completely root bound when I took them out of the pots, and I should have sent them back, but I wound up giving them a try to see how they would do, and sure enough, they haven't put on any growth. They are always really late to come out of dormancy, and it's probably due to the poor root structure. Here's a picture of what they look like, and as you can see, both of them were root bound. The roots were not healthy looking at all, and I should have just sent them back and got a refund or a replacement, but I decided to give it a try, and it was just a waste of time. I'll likely wind up pulling these and planting some other trees in this area. And this is my cherry of the Rio Grande. This is another tree that doesn't handle the cold quite well. This one lost just about all its leaves during winter, and it's just now starting to bounce back. I've had this tree for about 4 years, and it's previously set fruit. The last good fruiting cycle off this tree was back in 2020. Back then it started to produce flowers sometime around July, and it wound up setting a fair amount of fruit. Last couple of seasons though, it's been flowering sometime around early to mid-February, and it's still relatively cold in my area, and there's not very many leaves on the tree when it does flower, so it doesn't set any fruit. And this is my Mexicola avocado. This one did handle the winter months a lot better than my Hass avocado. It seems to be a little bit hardier. As you can see here, it's got some pretty healthy leaves. And these are the newest additions to my orchard. This one here on the far left is a Fuyu persimmon. I'll be keeping this one in a container until next season, and I'll be planting it over by next to the Fuyu that I showed you earlier. And next are my Abiu and Achacha tree. And before I go any further, I wanted to give a big thanks to a friend of mine who wound up picking these up for me from a nursery that's pretty far from where I live. He lives close to that nursery that I purchased these from, and he was going to take a trip up this way, so he was kind enough to swing by and pick these up for me. So big thanks. I've been looking for these trees for a long time, and I hadn't been able to find them here locally, so he really helped me out by picking up those trees for me. So big thank you. These trees are fairly mature and very healthy looking. I'm hoping I'll be able to get them to fruit in my area. I've searched YouTube and found several people that are growing these, and they're doing well, but I haven't found any where they have actually got them to fruit. According to nursery info, they should do well in my area. I'll be sure to keep you posted on their progress. Well, that'll be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. If so, please don't forget to hit that like button And if you'd like to follow along, please consider subscribing to my channel. Until next time, as always, stay safe, grow your own, and thank you for watching.